Hi Stuart, thank you for joining us at Digital Construction Week. Would you mind just giving us a quick background into yourself please, and who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 decades at this now. Started in the early 90s with a professional quantity surveying practice that had a little IT development arm, and so my career is pre and post contract estimating, post contract valuations, whole life costing. Then I joined Microsoft's lead partner in construction in ERP, and then moved actually from construction into architecture engineering and worked for a business called Union Square for a decade. Really interesting role. And then I reunited with the former chairman to come back into information management with a company called BC till they were acquired by Bentley Systems. And for the last nearly 2 years now, I've been leading sales and marketing at Glider.
Right, excellent. So you've got a wealth of experience in the industry across all areas, but what would you say some of the biggest challenges have been in your time?
In our industry, it's always people, process, technology, isn't it, that we centre on, and the people factor is always the biggest challenge, the biggest resistor to change. There's no surprise that construction is still only second bottom of the whole league table out of every industry vertical, just above hunting, mining and fishing, and there's no reason for that. It's really kept my appetite though and interest, because I'm always thinking we're ripe for disruption. So it's the last 3 decades. I think I'm the catalyst for change, and I'll make the change happen.
Make it work. And Glider are here today, specifically discussing strategies for successfully delivering smart buildings. So can you explain how you feel digital skills particularly can help in this instance, and also how it can help the sort of industry move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, back to that people factor. Clients are demanding more than ever out of their built assets and their estate. Historically, at handover, they'd be left with a collection of documentation that would sit probably in either a physical or now a chaotic digital archive somewhere. From a smart buildings perspective, there's now new demands. There's net zero, there's energy savings, there's post-pandemic, there's hybrid working and how we're going to optimise our space. And a lot of that is driven by data. And if you don't have individuals that understand the need and can articulate their requirements, and can actually validate information that's coming back into the organisation, it's going to be a real challenge to unlock the value out of that smart building discussion.
You mentioned it a moment ago, and the construction industry has been accused of being incredibly slow to facilitate change. Given the potential that you see with digital skills for the industry, have you witnessed this, and if so, what do you feel is causing this, and how do you feel we can overcome this as far as the potential that digital technology holds for the industry?
I think there's probably a couple of factors here. One is the fragmented nature of how we work. As much as we think we're good at collaboration, we're still very much work in silos. When we think of that separation between CapEx and operations, the discord between designers and contractors, we're beset with challenges because of some of those soft skill politics that we're not very good at. I've done a few things with universities providing lectures to architectural students, for instance, and particularly around practice management. They're given 2 weeks on a 7-year degree course, and some of the reflections or conversations I've had is they've stepped out into industrial placement from university. It's like a handbrake going on, and when I reflect on my travels, and I'm sure it's the same for yourself, there's a little bit of Brontosaurus effect still. Some of it is a vendor challenge. We're not very good at articulating the business case. We're not tuned into the outcome and value. We don't really listen to the customer pain and problem, and a business case gets rushed forward, and often those projects end in non-decisions as a result.
Yeah, and the last few years, to just briefly remind ourselves, has had a profound effect on the country, with challenges I think still felt in the industry. How are your clients coping with these particular challenges?
Mixed bag really, depending on who we work with. Major asset owners and principal contractors. What I would say as a bit of an odd positive that came out of the pandemic effect is that it probably the first 3 months of lockdown did more for digital transformation for our industry than the UK BIM mandate back in 2016, because we were forced to change. We were forced into home office working. We were forced to adopt new ways of collaborating and exchanging information and working with one another. And we still see that persisting today with our clients. I think on the asset owner side, there's much more diversity in terms of the work that's out there. There's been a maturing in clients in terms of what they expect from the performance of their assets in their built estate, and as a result of that, there's more innovation is starting to appear. We held a breakfast panel discussion this morning, and we had some fantastic clients in the room from public and private sector. Some of the best innovation is coming from public sector. So we had Defence Infrastructure Organisation and the Ministry of Justice, and we're doing some work with the Ministry of Justice currently around digital twin, but very specifically around a use case on energy performance. So we've recently delivered over a major prison and an enriched BIM model for that major prison, and they've given us now access to some energy and some sensor data, and they're looking to drive insight on design, occupancy, CO2 and energy performance, and for the first time bringing those two worlds together, time series data from sensor information and BIM data, you can get unlock some real insight that genuinely adding value. And people are now starting, the pennies dropping in terms of that connection back to digital as well.
Yeah, and I think Glider's had some sort of fairly significant growth during this time as well. You agree? And how did you approach the sort of ever-changing situation in the industry, and how did you sort of continue to motivate and involve the team?
Well, we're still, albeit we're 7 years old, I would still say we're in scaling startup mode. We are that speedboat that can spin on a sixpence rather than an oil tanker of an organisation. So we're very agile. We're on some really cool and interesting projects. So for the data geeks in our business, it really keeps their tools sharp because it's challenging them day to day, and it's a pleasure for them to come to work. For some of them as well that actually have got young families, the fact that we're virtual and we support that remote working, we're very flexible around things like school runs and childcare and how people work. All of that helps as well. But we're also coming out the downturn with this wave of innovation and this drive towards digital. We've always been well positioned to capitalise on that, and I guess my job is to keep us at the forefront of conversation so that Glider is a name that people think about.
Yeah, so from a professional perspective, how do you feel the key to survival was, and how did you adapt during this time? And you touched on a few things there, but anything else you can add to that?
Yeah, so I think key for us was to be open, amenable and flexible with our clients. Whilst we could have been very selective with the types of work clients were asking us to support them on, we were a little bit more open in those conversations, and I think as a result, rather than the traditional software approach of we'll just come and implement some software and leave you to your own devices, because we're an information management consultancy service provider as well, we really help clients get the project over the line and be successful, because if we can win with them, we become memorable and they think about us for extra projects as well.
I suppose if there was one thing, is there anything different that you would do?
We were possibly a little bit tentative, in terms of none of us knew, crystal ball gazing, the early days of the pandemic, where we would all end up in terms of business. What would that cliff edge look like in terms of order book work? Actually, the benefit of hindsight, if we were a little bit more optimistic and speculated a little bit more, I'm sure we could have accelerated our position even further. But we're in a great, healthy place. Good,
that's good to hear. Are there any tips and tricks you could personally found during this time that you'd like to share with the industry?
For me, always be inquisitive, be prepared to challenge and be challenged, and where we sit with our information management consulting roles, so on projects, we'll quite happily, if we see a bad set of requirements presented, we'll quite happily, for instance, if we're supporting a contractor, help them challenge back the client to validate, to make sure they're getting value from the information that they receive. I think as well, keep up the communication and have fun. So whilst we're a virtual business, we get together as a leadership group monthly. I think it's important to have that FaceTime, and a good part of that is not talking about work, and really getting into some conversations over a coffee or at the witching hour of the day over a beer. And similarly with the extended company as well, we get together quarterly. And we've purposefully said we're not talking about business on those days, and we put an agenda that's built around kind of team building activities, and tends to end up with me embarrassing myself on a dance floor somewhere.
As an industry as well, we talk about innovation. Do you think there's enough innovation in the industry, and do you feel that there's more that could be done?
I think we only have to look a couple of degrees left and right of our industry into other complementary sectors to realise, yes, absolutely, there is more to be done. You know, if we could just bridle some of the technology talk that's around at the moment, so AI, machine learning, and apply that logically into some of the highly structured data that we're actually quite good at an industry in collating and collecting. There's some fantastic insights that we could drive out of that. We've still got that traditional mindset, unfortunately, and if we can continue to challenge, and even, you know, people in business challenging their own executive to give them a bit of free rein. I'm fortunate enough in my career that I've worked with a couple of US organisations and been part of an American culture, and they're not afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And actually, if you were to tack probably a UK business that does a lot of planning up front, and a US business that will just run at opportunity or run at challenges, they probably end up in a slightly better place. Might be a few casualties in the wake in that process, but generally, culturally, people are acceptant of that, and they take the learning from it to carry it forward.
Yeah. So, you've got your crystal ball out. What are your predictions for the future of the industry?
I think, in the words of Yaz and the plastic population, the only way is up, and especially supported by digital. So I was speaking very recently to a tier 1 contractor, and when you look at their turnover and number of employees, it's about £1 million per head, their contribution to turnover. Looking at their own growth projections, there aren't enough digital skills and capability or people available for them to scale. So they've got to look at technology to make them more productive and efficient and effective. And we're now seeing that. And we're seeing that as well through contractors embracing things like modern methods of construction and off-site manufacture, and making sure that off-site manufacturer becoming fully laden and loaded with IoT and intelligent building technologies that can plug in and possibly in the very near future give a client a building operating system. So a bit like we go to the garage now and we plug our car in, symptomatically that will happen with the building as well. And buildings will talk to us. You know, they know a lot about themselves already, and with the available technology, our interaction with buildings will be very different. Rather than just look through a dumb terminal at a dashboard, we'll be able to have a conversation with the building, and it will understand about our work pattern and how we like to interact with it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really exciting and really looking forward to it. So just one last question. We're here at Digital Construction. What's your takeaway from the event, and what are you looking forward to the future with construction?
Well, this is, I've been to the last 3 with my glider hat on, and what I'm really pleased coming out of the pandemic is that it's grown successfully, but the conversations are getting better as well. There's a more quality conversation. I look at the stage talks. There's some real good knowledge share going on now. There's people actually talking about ROI and payback and illustrating through projects. So long may that long may that continue. And people coming with purpose. You know, time is a valuable commodity for all of us. So a lot of the conversations that I've had today, and hopefully into tomorrow as well, will be very much around very specific challenges that companies have got. Yeah.
Sure, I think it's time for a well-earned drink now. So it's been an absolute pleasure to get your valued experience in the industry. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you very much indeed.